Mountain Men vs. Blackfoot Warriors in Idaho 1832. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be caught in the deadly crossfire between America's most fearsome mountain men and the legendary Blackfoot Warriors? Join us as we uncover one of the most dramatic confrontations in frontier history, where courage, strategy, and survival collide in the untamed wilderness of the American West. Subscribe to Native Legends and History Stories for more gripping tales of frontier warfare and indigenous resistance. Hit the notification bell to never miss our episodes of Authentic American History. Eastern Idaho 1832. The crisp mountain air shatters with a sharp crack of gunfire. Lead bullets slice through the morning mist, whizzing past the ears of a small band of Blackfoot warriors. Their hearts pound in rhythm with their horses' thundering hooves as they race across the rugged terrain, seeking any means of escape. Behind them, a group of determined American fur trappers pressed their pursuit, their weather-worn faces set with grim determination as they level their single-shot rifles and weathered pistols from atop their lathered mounts. The warriors' keen eyes spot Salvation, a small lake nestled between towering granite peaks. With no other option for escape, they drive their exhausted horses straight into the frigid mountain waters. The icy lake quickly rises to their horses' withers, the shock of cold water sending shivers through both mount and rider. But rather than surrender, the Blackfoot warriors turn in their saddles, their powerful bows drawn with deadly precision. The pursuing trappers pull their horses to a sudden halt at the water's edge. Though eager for the kill, they're experienced enough to know the folly of charging into deep water with loaded firearms. They retreat to the natural cover of the lake's rocky shore, where weathered boulders and thick timber provide protection from the warriors' arrows. Tense standoff ensues. The trappers, confident in their superior position, exchange sporadic shots with their waterlogged quarry. Victory seems assured until a flash of movement catches their eye. One Blackfoot warrior, mounted on an exceptionally swift pony, breaks away from the group. His horse's hooves barely seem to touch the ground as he vanishes into the terrain, heading toward what the trappers will soon discover is the main Blackfoot camp mere miles away. Within minutes, the ground trembles under the weight of hundreds of mounted Blackfoot warriors pouring over the hilltop. At their head rides Chief Eagle Ribs, his impressive buffalo horn headdress marking him as one of the elite members of the Buffalo Society. His face is painted for war, his features set in a mask of controlled fury as he leads his warriors to rescue their trapped brethren. The tables turn dramatically. The trappers' confidence evaporates as they face the full might of the Blackfoot Nation, the undisputed masters of the northern plains. This is no ordinary tribe, but a powerful force that has dominated these territories through decades of ruthless expansion. Since acquiring horses in the 17th century, they have transformed into the most feared warriors of the region, their very name sending chills down the spines of even the most hardened mountain men. The trappers know all too well the stories of what happens to those who fall into Blackfoot hands alive. Death in battle would be a mercy compared to the fate that awaits captured enemies. As arrows rain down and bullets whiz past, the once confident trappers have no choice but to abandon their attack. They wheel their horses around and flee toward their distant camp. The thunder of pursuing hoof beats, spurring them to even greater speed. The hunters have become the hunted, and the real battle is about to begin. Minutes before the fleeing riders burst into camp, life had followed its usual peaceful rhythm. Men moved about their daily routines, mending torn clothing, cleaning rifles, repairing worn saddles. The smell of coffee and bacon still lingered in the morning air as trappers counted their supplies and prepared for another day in the wilderness. Then came the thundering of hooves, the shouts of warning, and within moments, the entire camp transformed from tranquil industry to frantic preparation for battle. The trappers now faced a fight for survival against hundreds of battle-hardened Blackfoot warriors in the untamed wilderness of the Idaho mountains. Among these frontiersmen stood 28-year-old Jim Bridger, whose weathered face and sharp eyes betrayed an experience far beyond his years. His broad shoulders hardened by years of mountain life, and his proven abilities in finding safe passages through treacherous mountains had earned him the position of elected leader among the trappers. Though young in age, Bridger had already covered more miles of the American West than most men would see into lifetimes. His journey had begun in Richmond, Virginia, where he was born as James Felix Bridger in 1804. Like countless other young Americans in the early 1800s, he had ventured westward, driven by dreams of fortune and adventure. From his earliest days on the frontier, he quickly mastered the essential skills of survival, tracking, hunting, and reading the countless signs of danger that meant the difference between life and death in the wilderness. In 1823, Bridger joined the historic Ashley's expedition, where 100 determined fur trappers set out from St. Louis into the unknown wilderness. Armed with his rifle and the confidence of youth, he quickly proved his worth by distinguishing himself among the veteran trappers. This first venture would test the young man's mettle in ways he could never have imagined. The defining moment came when he and another trapper, John Fitzgerald, were assigned to stay behind with the grievously wounded Hugh Glass. The veteran trapper had suffered a horrific attack from a mother grizzly bear, his body torn and mangled so severely that death seemed certain within hours. For days and nights, Bridger and Fitzgerald maintained their vigil in hostile territory. They treated Glass's wounds as best they could, using the limited medical knowledge available. Frontiermen, every snapped twig and rustling leaf raised the specter of lurking native warriors. They took turns keeping watch, while Glass clung to life with stubborn tenacity. His labored breathing and occasional groans, the only signs that death hadn't yet claimed him. Their supplies dwindled dangerously low, and the constant threat of hostile warriors weighed heavily on their minds. The bitter cold and constant fear gradually wore down their resolve. After another sleepless night, punctuated by wolf howls and distant war cries, they made a decision that would haunt them both. Taking Glass's essential survival tools, items they rationalized would be wasted on a dying man, they abandoned him to what they believed was his inevitable fate. The two men retreated to civilization, their consciences heavy but their lives intact. Bridger found work with another fur company, while Fitzgerald enlisted in the army. But Hugh Glass refused to die. In one of the most extraordinary feats of human endurance, he crawled and stumbled hundreds of miles through hostile territory to the nearest fort, his mangled body somehow healed, through sheer force of will, surviving on whatever meager sustenance he could find along the way. His iron determination carried him through an ordeal that would have claimed the lives of most men. When Glass recovered, his thoughts turned to revenge. He tracked down his former companions through miles of rough terrain, only to find Fitzgerald protected by his army uniform and Bridger barely more than a boy. In an act of remarkable mercy, Glass forgave them both, though the weight of that guilt would stay with Bridger for years to come. Yet even this infamous beginning couldn't deter the young man from his chosen path. Instead of retreating to safer pursuits, Bridger pushed deeper into the frontier, building a reputation as one of the most reliable guides in the West through his fair dealings and proven courage. In 1820, for Bridger's adventurous spirit led him into the untamed wilderness of the Yellowstone region. Pushing through dense forests and treacherous mountain passes, he became one of the first white men to document this magnificent territory in present-day northwestern Wyoming. His keen eye and explorer's instinct brought him to the breathtaking sight of the parting waters at Yellowstone Lake, a discovery that would later draw thousands to this natural wonder. By 1830, Bridger's reputation and business acumen had grown substantially. Together with several other ambitious trappers from Ashley's original 100-man expedition, he seized an opportunity to purchase legendary frontiersman Jedediah Smith's stake in their venture. This bold move gave birth to the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, a direct challenge to John Jacob Astor's dominating American Fur Company. The new enterprise represented the mountain men's fierce independence and determination to control their own destinies in the fur trade. The harsh realities of frontier economics caught up with them by 1834. Beaver populations had dwindled dramatically, their precious pelts becoming increasingly scarce. The Rocky Mountain Fur Company, despite its founder's determination, succumbed to market pressures and was absorbed into Astor's expanding empire. Yet the setback did not diminish Bridger's commitment to the mountain man's way of life. 1835 marked a personal milestone. When Bridger married Emma, a woman from the Flathead tribe who knew intimately the territories he trapped, their union would produce 3 children, adding new purpose to his dangerous expeditions into increasingly hostile territories. Though the profits grew smaller and the risks greater, Bridger's family responsibilities drove him to persist in the trapper's life he knew so well. Now in 1836, Bridger and his fellow trappers eagerly anticipated the annual rendezvous at Pierre's Hole in present-day Idaho. Here, mountain men would converge to sell their hard-won furs and pelts accumulated through months of dangerous work in unforgiving wilderness. Trading posts displayed vital supplies, ammunition traps, tobacco, coffee, and the tools essential for survival in the mountains. The atmosphere at these gatherings pulsed with life and energy, the air filled with multiple languages: English, French, and various native tongues, mixing together as trades were negotiated. Expert hunters shared tales of close encounters with grizzlies, successful trapping spots, and routes through treacherous mountain passes. Native women prepared traditional dishes, while mountain men sampled each other's frontier. Cooking, though drinking and gambling occurred. The rendezvous maintained a spirit of necessary business and cultural exchange rather than pure revelry. The promise of these anticipated pleasures, fresh baked bread, hard cider, and most importantly, human companionship, made the approaching rendezvous seem almost tangible to Bridger and his men. But these dreams shattered as riders burst into camp at full gallop, their horses lathered with exertion. The dreaded cry of Blackfoot rippled through the camp like lightning. Bridger's response was immediate. His experience showed in every decisive movement as he grabbed his single-shot rifle and began directing men into defensive positions. The trappers formed a battle line, their weapons trained toward the direction of approaching danger. In the eerie moments that followed, only the drumming of distant hoof beats and the high-pitched war cries of advancing warriors broke the tension. The Blackfoot war party materialized atop the hill, overlooking their camp, their silhouettes stark against the sky. Both sides froze in a moment of mutual assessment, the trappers counting the warriors, the Blackfoot measuring the strength of the defense before them. The air grew thick with tension as each side calculated their odds, knowing the next few moments would determine who would live and who would die on this patch of Idaho wilderness. Among the tense crowd of trappers, one figure stood apart: a Blackfoot woman, whose dark eyes scanned the warrior ranks with desperate intensity. She was the wife of Loreto, a Mexican trapper who had years earlier rescued her from captivity among the Crow people. Though long separated from her tribe, the blood of the Blackfoot still ran strong in her veins, and their customs and language remained as familiar to her as breathing. Her heart raced as she searched the faces of the mounted warriors, hoping against hope to recognize a brother, cousin, or childhood friend among them. Though years had passed since she had last walked among her people, the possibility of finding a familiar face in this moment of crisis gave her both terror and hope. The tension broke unexpectedly when Chief Eagle Ribs, his buffalo horn headdress marking his authority, rode forward from the battle line. In his hands he held aloft the sacred peace pipe, its presence an unmistakable symbol of diplomatic intent. With measured gestures he signaled for the trappers to send their own delegation for talks. Bridger, recognizing the critical need for accurate communication, turned to the Blackfoot woman. Despite the fear evident in her eyes, she nodded her agreement to serve as interpreter. Together with Bridger and a small group of trusted trappers, she rode out into the open space between the two forces. The sound of their horses' hooves seemed unnaturally loud in the graveyard silence that had fallen over the battlefield. As they approached the meeting point, Bridger's experienced eye never stopped moving. He studied the warriors positioned behind Eagle Ribs, noting their weapons, their positioning, their state of readiness. With each passing moment, his unease grew stronger. Something in the warrior's stance, the way they gripped their weapons, sent warning signals through his battle-hardened instincts. They drew within yards of Chief Eagle Ribs and his men. The chief extended his hand in the universal gesture of peace, his face a mask of diplomatic calm. But Bridger's suspicions had reached their peak. With movements he tried to keep imperceptible, he slowly drew back the hammer of his rifle. In the dead silence, the click of the mechanism rang out like a thunderclap. Eagle Reeb's reaction was instantaneous. His hand shot out with snake-like speed, grasping the barrel of Bridger's rifle and forcing it downward. Bridger squeezed the trigger, but the bullet plowed harmlessly into the dirt. In the next breath, the space between the delegations exploded into violent chaos. Bridger and Eagle Ribs grappled furiously atop their dancing horses, each man fighting for control of the rifle. The other trappers and warriors joined the melee, weapons forgotten, in favor of desperate hand-to-hand combat. Only the Blackfoot woman remained apart, frozen in horror at the sudden eruption of violence. Through the chaos came the distinctive whine of an arrow. In flight it struck Bridger in the lower back, with devastating force driving deep into his flesh. Before he could process the shock and pain of the first hit, a second arrow slammed into him just above the first. Eagle Ribs seized the advantage, wrenching the rifle from Bridger's weakening grasp and delivering a powerful blow that sent the trapper tumbling from his saddle. The impact was so violent that Bridger was certain his neck had snapped. The Blackfoot woman, seeing her chance in the chaos, wheeled her horse around and spurred it toward the trapper lines, where her husband and infant child waited. Her heart pounded with the hoof beats of her mount as she fled the scene of violence, torn between her two worlds, but driven by the primal need to reach her child. The Blackfoot warriors swiftly intercepted the woman's escape, their horses forming a wall between her and the trapper lines. Her composure shattered as maternal instinct took over, and she began screaming for her child, her voice raw with desperation. The warriors remained stoic until recognition dawned in their eyes. Here was one of their own, lost and now found. Chief Eagle Ribs, despite the blood still flowing from the battle, showed an unexpected mercy. He instructed her to call for her husband to bring their child. Terror and hope warred on Loretto's face as he heard his wife's call. Clutching their infant close to his chest, he stepped into the empty space between the two forces.